Welcome back to the Self-Esteem and Confidence Mindset podcast with me, Jonny Pardoe. And today I welcome Terry onto the show, and I'm looking forward to our conversation today. So, a quick introduction to Terry, and I'm going to dive into the conversation. So, a survivor of life-threatening cancer that left him with a permanent facial difference, Terry Healey is an author, keynote speaker, and business strategist, a graduate of UC Berkeley with a 35-year career as a marketing executive. Terry challenges audiences to face adversity and change and apply his framework and principles to gain confidence, build resilience, and find greater purpose and joy in their personal and professional lives. Terry lives in Santa Cruz, California with his wife Sue. And for more information about Terry, you can find him at terryhealey.com. So, welcome to the show today, Terry. Glad to have you on. And
Thanks
thanks for
for having
joining
me,
us.
Johnny. Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Look forward to it.
That's awesome. So, I'm excited about the fact you're from California, going there in a week and a half myself. So,
Oh,
be
good
awesome.
deal.
Yeah. So, Terry, I always say California there. Terry, be really interested to hear a little bit about what is your framework that I touched on there, and how did you develop it from your story?
Yeah, so I developed what I call a resilience framework that can really serve as a blueprint for anybody really that's dealing with any kind of challenge. And so there's four phases of that resilience framework. It's also designed to help rebuild and help people gain confidence and find greater purpose. So I call it rebar, which is really about, representation there is really it's about strength, right? And building strength. But I'll talk about the four components. But yeah, how I arrived at it, Johnny, was that I, God, long time ago when I was in college, I was diagnosed with a really rare form of cancer, life-threatening, facially disfiguring, changed my life drastically. So, long story short is that I had to develop coping skills and mechanisms and figure out between what I could find in my own inner strength and what I could learn from others, how I could bounce back and overcome this and live in society normally. And so over many years, I kind of arrived at this framework that we can talk about.
Oh, amazing. No, that's great how you've used like your story and what you've gone through to develop something that others can use. Um,
Yeah.
be great to kind of hear those four phases in the framework.
Yeah, so and sort of part of what spawned this whole thing was really when I was telling my story, my personal story, I would finish a presentation, a session, and many times people would say, "Hey, I already read your memoir, but what you talk about are all of these other coping skills that I think are applicable to other people. You should write a book, write about that."
Mhm.
So I finally got around to it. But yeah, rebar, as I said, is really a resilience or an adversity framework. It consists of four key phases. And I truly believe that everyone has the capacity to build resilience. I think that we learn to adapt, we recover from setbacks, and we grow stronger from our life experiences, right? And so those four things that I talk about or write about are the first phase is reflect, the second is build, the third is act, and the fourth is renew. And I'll just touch on them really quickly if that's okay, Johnny.
Yeah. Good. Yes,
So
please.
reflect is really about finding that 5 to 10 minutes a day to step back from your life and reflect on what's happened during the course of your day. And I always say start with gratitude because when you start with what you're grateful for, which there's always a million things to be grateful for, we tend to be in a better mindset. So you start there and then you reflect on your day and think about what transpired, what you learned. Were you inspired by anything? And granted, not every day is going to be eye-opening, right? But if you're in the daily practice and you build that muscle memory of reflection, things will come. And those experiences in your mind can lead to changes that are very positive, both in the workplace and in your personal life. The second phase, build, is really about developing that positive mindset, that growth mindset. And I would say that here, this stage is really when you start to identify your support system. It's when you start to focus on living life in balance. It's when you really focus on that positive mindset where, facing challenges and roadblocks in life is a lot easier when you have a positive mindset than when you're dealing in fear and doubt, right? The third phase, act, is really where the rubber meets the road. So this is when we start to take control. Excuse me. This is when we start to face our challenges. This is when we get really focused and set goals. So it's execution mode. And then finally, renew, the final phase is really, if you've made it to this phase, you survived. So that's a good thing. And this is the time when you step back to learn from that adversity, from that challenge. Make sure you take the time to learn from it. What did you learn about yourself? Uh, Celebrate your wins, certainly, because that helps build confidence. But step back, think about what you learned. What traits and characteristics do you embody that enabled you to deal with that challenge? That's going to help you build your confidence. And so it's really this commitment to the process that helps you become a better version of who you are. And so that's kind of how the framework works.
I like that. I like the reflect, and particularly starting with gratitude and what you touched on there. So yeah, like what's your kind of gratitude practice you do?
What practice?
Yeah, for gratitude.
Oh, for gratitude. So, yeah, I mean, I do it more than once a day.
Mm.
So I start my day with it, but I also end my day with it. And I just think about it's oftentimes the same things we think about every day, right? I'm grateful for my health. I'm grateful for my family. I'm grateful for my wife. I'm grateful that I've found a purpose in my life, that I've found success from the standpoint of I'm happy, I'm happy and content with who I am. So there's a million things to be grateful for. So that's really where I start. But I will tell you, it does put you in a better place when you start there. It's similar, Johnny, I think, to I talk a lot about exercise, physical exercise, and another practice I've had for 45 years is getting up in the morning and working out. And I'll tell you, it puts me in a better mood and it helps me feel better about myself all day. And I'll tell you, when I miss those workouts, I'm grouchier. I notice it, you
Mhm.
know.
Oh wow, so you work out every day.
I try to. There's
Mm.
always something that might come up once a week or
Yeah.
whatever, and you have to be flexible too. You can't beat yourself up, right?
Mm. Very true. I like that. So your new book, The Resilience Mind, or your book, The Resilience Mindset, is that kind of based on the framework?
Yeah, I would describe it as, the resilience mindset is about how adversity can strengthen us really as individuals, as teams, and as leaders by helping us to build resilience, gain confidence, and find greater purpose. But so that's kind of, there's three sections to it. I share my personal story that I just kind of shared with you. And then I also profile in the final section 7 other individuals who overcame seemingly insurmountable odds, came out the other side transformed, also with greater purpose. And so those stories are incredibly inspiring. I mean, I'm just blown away by what people can deal with. But the core section, middle section of my book is all about my framework. And as you get into that final section, you find a lot of similarities with how people deal with major adversity. So people generally fit into these phases that I talk about. They may not define them as I do, but I think people oftentimes naturally find survival tools and mechanisms, right?
Mm. I love it. No, it's great, Terry. And I know a lot of people struggle to find purpose these days. They're like, right, I'm a bit stuck. I don't know where to go. And it's like, from what I see you're doing, around the world. You're writing books, you're putting your message out there, you're impacting lives, which is amazing. Thank you for doing that, Terry. But I know a lot of people are kind of like stuck with their purpose. Does it kind of go into that at all? And if someone's stuck with their purpose, where
Yeah,
do you
it does.
advise starting? Yeah.
Yeah, it does. I think that it really helps to kind of embrace change because we all have to deal with it, right? And some people try to avoid it, some people try to ignore it, but really, so I talk a lot about embracing change because when you embrace change, it forces you to kind of rethink what you're doing. And that's really, some people would say that change creates stress, right? And stress isn't all bad. You know, stress actually helps motivate us oftentimes to do things that we normally might not do. And so I think that stress helps us in the work life meet deadlines, right? It sort of gets us focused. But in a time of crisis, I think it also brings that level of focus to the table. And people start to find that they can start to question maybe what they're doing right now and embrace what the change might be. And when you're reflecting on it, oftentimes you can find greater purpose. I mean, the greatest gift I would say about adversity really is that we often do find greater purpose, right? It's not something I would never wish what happened to me on anybody. Never. But as you read these stories about other people, it's just it's amazing how traumatic events and things like that can truly help you focus on what really matters to you and what's really important, and that becomes your purpose.
Hmm. Okay, and the individual who maybe is not gone through something traumatic at the moment, but they're a bit. I feel like we all, personally,
Yeah,
just in my view, we all go through some kind of different kind of traumas to some kind of degrees.
yeah,
But like the individual who might not be feeling that extreme trauma right now or gone through something, but they just feel a bit stuck. It
yeah,
sounds like that book would be really useful to kind of get different perspectives as well from different
yeah.
people.
Yeah, and Johnny, I can address that a little bit more specifically
Mm,
because I think it's a great question. The reality is not everybody's dealing with major crises all the time. But one of the things I share as part of the ACT phase is goal setting and focus. And so what I was able to do was find singular goals in my personal life, a singular goal in my business life, and really just hone in on something and focus on it 100%. So what my most pressing challenge was or my most pressing goal was, that's all I focused on. I took everything else and threw it away. And that might sound sort of different than what typical work life situations often entail, where they say, "Oh, what are our New Year's resolutions? We need 10 of them, or what are the top three business priorities?" But my personal feeling is that when we have a lot of priorities, we really don't have any. And so when
mm,
you focus on one, I think that really helps you find purpose because you're laser focused. And when you deal with that and conquer it or achieve it, you always feel more confident with
mm.
yourself because you've done the hard work.
I love that. I really love that perspective and yeah, building that confidence in you because I personally feel like for me, I've totally been guilty of focusing on like so many things, and it's like, right, I'm doing that, and sometimes it can be excitable. It's like, oh, I like that, I like that, I like that, and but then it gets to a point where it's like, oh, it's overwhelming stress. I was cramming too much into my
Yeah,
schedule,
yeah,
and I'm like the achiever type. I'm like, I'll get it all done by the end of sort of thing, so then it kind of
yeah,
all builds up. But I know in general we live in a world that's quite oh, there's this, oh, there's that, oh, there's that opportunity, like particularly the last
yeah,
10, 15 years or whatever.
yeah.
So it can be quite easy to be caught off by things. So I really kind of resonated and wrote down the focus on the goal there. Um,
Yeah. And can I touch on one more thing there?
oh, please, yeah.
Yeah, because again, this conversation is really good because it's spawning different points. But I talk about having a singular goal, but I also talk about outlets, which I almost equate more with personal goals. So outlets could be anything from learning how to play the guitar, for somebody that's not musically inclined, which I was. I was not musically inclined.
Oh, I've got no
But
ability.
that became a goal for me, right? And certainly, you could say that that might have added stress to my life because I had to focus on that every night. That was like another goal of mine, but it was also an outlet which relieved me of the stress of the other goal that I might have been dealing with all day long at work that I was consumed by.
Mm,
So now I'm doing something else which my mind is laser focused on. And because I need to focus on it, I can't really think about anything else because I'll tell you, playing the guitar, right? I had to concentrate on the chord changes and strum patterns. I wasn't a natural with an ear that could just say, oh, that's a G chord, that's a C chord, and just play. I couldn't do that. I had to focus 100%. And that was okay with me. I made progress.
mm. So the outlets you had, they're different from the singular goal.
Yeah, a little bit. I think of it as it could still be it could be a personal goal, an outlet,
Okay.
right? But I think professional goals are important too. I guess they can be intertwined as well for somebody.
Mm,
But I think it's good to kind of distinguish the two because you really should have a personal life and think of your professional life a little bit differently because when they marry together, sometimes that's challenging in the home, right?
mm. No, that's true. Yeah, I remember there's kind of brings me back and makes a lot of sense because the book Think and Grow Rich he goes on about Napoleon Hill goes on about the definite chief aim, and that was one of the most popular books out there and impacted lots. And he's talking about a definite chief aim, so it's like makes a lot of sense in that context when I heard you say that. Yeah, that one. So
Yes.
yeah, with so like resilience, like and build like how like it can be, things can be challenging, things can come in. Is does the book go in? The book goes into kind of like building resilience. Yeah.
Yeah, and though I talk about my framework, I also talk about my survival kit,
Mm,
which is kind of a it's built into the framework, but my survival kit was really all about resilience, right? So there's really seven things in my survival kit. And one was my religious faith. It gave me courage, gave me strength, but it also gave me hope. And I think that hope is something that's really key to resilience. If you're hopeful, you can bounce back easier than if you're not, right? If you're not in that frame of mind. I would say it's not all about myself either. It's support systems help you become more resilient. The people that you love, the people that you trust. We talked about focus and goals, but I think that helps build resilience because when you're focused on something and you're working towards something, you feel like there's life ahead. Um, that focus around positivity and a positive mindset is so critical to resilience because it keeps you hopeful, right? The other things I would say would be if group therapy was something that someone chose to do, me personally, it was great. That really helped me because I could, for the first time, I felt like I had the courage to share my vulnerabilities with people that I couldn't share them with my family and friends, right? It's just a
mm,
different type of environment. And then lastly, it kind of ties into visualization. I'm sorry, it ties into positivity, but visualization and positive imaging. I think those things help build resilience too, because you're sort of envisioning where you're going to be in the future. And if it's in a better place, it just I think your whole body just naturally feels better. Mind, body, spirit, everything.
mm. I like the visualization element. That's a good one. Being a key one. So with working on, you mentioned about like being in a group therapy session and being able to be vulnerable with them and share where perhaps you didn't feel comfortable with like family or close friends and things like that. Has
Yeah.
there been, you may have touched on some of them there, but in terms of self-esteem and self-love for yourself, popular topic on this podcast, of course, through your journey, was there anything in particular that helped you build that relationship with yourself even stronger?
Now, are you referring to the part about group therapy specifically, or
Uh,
no?
just in general, I was kind of touching on group therapy because that sounded like a really good kind of therapeutic.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, group therapy was really eye-opening for me, Johnny, because I wasn't raised with that being part of our lives, right? It wasn't something that was ever encouraged. It was, I kind of joke about it. I was always told, oh, that's for people with problems. We don't have problems. It's like, actually, I do have problems. I got big ones. I don't look the way I used to look. I don't feel good about myself. I've lost my
Mm,
confidence. How do I rebuild it? But I think that going to a place, therapy, where um, people aren't necessarily going to just tell you what your family and friends are going to tell you. Your family and friends are always going to make you feel better. They're going to basically say, oh, it's going to be okay. It's going to be great. You're doing great. You're strong. You're tough. And though that helps in a reinforcement kind of way of who you are, I think the beauty of group therapy for me is that you're literally sharing your deepest, darkest thoughts. And in those conversations, the natural dialogue becomes something that I really fed on in a way that, yeah, there were tough things that were said, but there were also inspiring things that were said about me that made me question, why don't I have high self-esteem?
mm,
Some people don't look at me any different because I'm quote unquote disfigured. They're looking right through it. And I don't think that that was something that they were faking, right? I think that it's like anything in life, right? When you meet somebody for the first time, you may make a judgment, but when you get to know somebody for 5 or 10 minutes, your judgment is very different. You think very differently. You don't, it's like you've got a very different point of view of somebody. And so, in a weird way, maybe it's hard to explain, but I feel like group therapy in particular was something that really helped build my self-esteem. And I talk a lot about how I'd walk out of a group session feeling like I'd taken 2 steps forward and 1 step back, instead of the way oftentimes I left a series of surgical procedures where I look at myself and say, God, I look worse than I did before. I took 2 steps backward for 1 step forward. Or 1 step forward and then 2 steps back after everything healed. It's like, oh, it doesn't look very good. It actually looks worse. Why did I do it? So if that makes sense. That was a big thing for me.
mm.
Huge. I
Group,
talk a lot about it. Yeah.
the group therapy. Okay, no, that's really really cool. So yeah, um, you found like new people in the process of sort of like in your support system.
Yeah. Yeah, I really did. I mean, I ended up, Johnny, being involved with the organization that I first went to for group therapy. It's called the Cancer Support Community. It's like a global. They've got offices everywhere. But I I was fortunate to find it right when it was opening in the San Francisco Bay Area, and I have been involved with it for over 30 years. In fact, I'm doing an event in September, a fundraiser where we're sharing my book. I'm doing a presentation to a bunch of people, and we're talking about this new $6 million center that they're building because they're bursting at the seams, um, with people that need support. And so yeah, it's something that had a huge impact on me. It's something that I can give back to, and it's remained a big part of my life.
That's awesome. Yeah, a big community. And giving back at the moment, is it you kind of doing mainly talks at the moment? You kind of working with individuals?
Yeah, I do. I do both. I work with this organization called Immerman Angels as well, which is interesting. Not everybody wants group therapy. So a lot of people want to have a one-on-one interaction, but they don't want to do it with a therapist. They want to do it with somebody who's experienced what they've experienced. So this organization sets up one-on-one peer relationships with a
Okay.
mentor and a mentee. So I've got a few of those going on. I've been working with one girl for a year now. Um, and it's just rewarding, right? To be able to help somebody who's literally walking down the same path that I had to walk down and making her feel and I mostly listen, Johnny. I don't shell out advice because that's not really what my role is. And I have to be very careful with that. It's mostly about listening, but I
Mm.
think understanding each other's stories and knowing that I came out the other side um, really helps people. And so that's rewarding for sure.
Mm. So yeah, like yeah, giving back in that sense, and then yeah, the listening. Um, yeah, when you went through your journey, was there any did you have to like I'd imagine some points there were some quite like terrifying moments, like going through the body and things like that. Were there any kind of like techniques you kind of use for that, like whether it was like breath work or meditation? Because I know quite a lot of people go through like these kind of like panic moments in their life. So I'm always curious to hear what
Yeah.
people use.
Yeah. So for me, the most powerful thing for me was positive imaging and visualization. And
Okay.
you hit on exactly what I felt often, which is like I would I'd be sitting there on the couch and all of a sudden I'd feel something in my cheek, and you knew it was something weird, like, oh no, what the heck is that? Right. And so you start to go into a panic. You get anxious, all these feelings. And so I was really good about telling myself, stop, step back. And I literally, sometimes I'd just go in and I'd lie on the floor in another room and I'd just practice visualization for 5 minutes. And I have this technique that I use that I just kind of learned from reading books, really. And it really calmed me and soothed me and put me at ease, and it was, for me, it was about going to another place and doing what I loved and sort of concentrating on something else with a positive outcome. And that would sort of get my mind off of things. So yeah, whenever I was nervous or anxious about it, even a procedure or a recurrence, right? Um, I would leverage visualization. Some people, and I talk a lot about meditation as well. I've done that as well. It's not for me as powerful as how I use visualization, but to each his own. I think everybody's got different ways of coping. So
Mm. That's really useful to hear yours. And again, like I'm always a believer, it's not a one size fits all. We've all got
yeah,
different
yeah.
things.
And
I used to be
that's
yeah.
a yeah. No, I was going to say that's a great point, Johnny, and that's what I want uh, your listeners to understand, and you understand, is that even though I have this framework, it's not like this rigid system. There's lots of components. There's lots of variables. There's lots of options, right?
Mm.
Each person's going to handle things differently and um, relate to different things that are going to help them cope.
Mm. Yeah, it's just it's kind of like a bit of guide. It's like a guidance, sort of like
Yeah,
framework, a kind of fundamentals that people can choose to use to kind of move forward. Um,
yeah,
and yeah, the visualizations are fascinating. I love that because yeah, it's often we can have very negative thoughts, and I found I can have very like in the past have very negative thoughts, and it's like oh I'm thinking that, and then I'm not feeling good, and it's kind of bringing those feelings, and then when I'm like
yeah,
thinking of what I want and then getting that, it's or just it's not like I have to get that thing, but like imagine the gratitude of getting that thing,
yeah,
or experiencing a great moment. It's a completely different feeling. So I
yeah.
love that one.
So you have the ability to adjust quickly. You recognize it, which is great, right? You recognize maybe when you're having a negative moment. I think that's hard for some. Some people have a really hard time getting out of that, right? So that's another kind of spectrum that people sit somewhere on. And yeah, again, you and I are grateful that we can make those adjustments rather quickly, I think.
No, it's yeah, it's a work. It's always a work in progress. There's
Of
the thing to
course. Yeah.
build, but yeah, it's yeah. I like to breathe. I get into the breath usually because I'm a big breath work kind of guy. So it's get
Okay.
into the breath to kind of change the state, and then I'm like feeling. But I love how you like positive visualization like helps you and kind of then that releases information. I had a guest on the other week he was saying that's fundamental in how he built his wealth, actually, the visualization element. So, yeah, the
Huh.
power of the mind, right?
Yeah. I mean, you look at a lot of professional athletes,
Mm,
a lot of the greatest athletes are way into visualization, right? I mean, it's a big part of how they help themselves better perform. I mean, I have in my book these studies that I refer to that were done, scientific studies about the power of visualization. So there's a lot of evidence-backed research in there too that, if somebody's skeptical about visualization or whatever, here's some data, I mean, it's powerful stuff.
powerful science behind it. No,
Yeah.
Terry, I know there's going to be there's an incredible amount of value that you're going to be sharing that's in that book and that you offer as well. Before we sort of wrap up today, it'd be really great to hear where the listener can get that book, to read even more, get their support, hear those inspirational stories from other people as well as yourself. And where can the listener find you if they want to reach out? And
Yeah, they can.
the final one I just say is if there's a final point you want to leave us with as well.
Yeah, I'll start with the final point if that's okay. One of my mantras is just I sort of tell people try to be aware, alert, attentive, open to what's happening around you because people and events will impact you, and nobody really knows where they're going to get the inspiration they need to make positive change. So just be open-minded to whatever's happening around you. So yeah, you can find me on, my website is terryhealey.com, and that's TerryHealey.com. All my social handles are there. I'm more active probably on LinkedIn and Instagram than anything else. And yeah, there's resources there as well. Lots of my content, so people can grab that for free, and hopefully it helps.
Oh, amazing. I love that, Terry. So, yeah, big thank you for coming on today and sharing everything. And be sure to check out Terry's links in the show notes below. Will be linked there. So, thank you again, Terry.
Thank you, John. I really appreciate you having me on your show.
Of course. So, that concludes our episode for today. And remember to lead with your heart and not with fear.